Trend Synth, where AI meets insight.
Okay, let's unpack this. If you're a student, maybe a journalist, a researcher, or, well, anyone who really uses their brain for a living, you know that feeling, right? Just drowning in information. You've got PDFs stacked high, maybe 50 browser tabs open, and somehow your own notes, they're less helpful than that blank page you started with. It's just overload. So today, our deep dive is into something that feels like a major shift, a really defining change in how knowledge workers are starting to interact with all that research material. We've got a stack of really fascinating sources here detailing this tool called NotebookLM. It's an AI, but it's designed specifically laser focus on solving this information anxiety problem. Our mission today is pretty clear: figure out if this tool really is the virtual research assistant it promises to be. And more importantly, how does it fundamentally change the research workflow for you, the person actually doing the learning or the work?
Yeah, and what's really interesting here, what jumps out from the sources, is that we're not talking about just another general purpose AI. Like the big LLMs. Those are brilliant, don't get me wrong, but they pull from the whole internet. Yeah. And sometimes, well, that leads to what we politely call hallucinations, right? Or they just lack the very specific context you need for your project. NotebookLM is different. The sources emphasize this again and again. It acts as a virtual research assistant that is grounded entirely and exclusively in the specific sources you give it. Nothing else.
Grounded. That sounds key. So it's not pulling from some vast unknown data set.
Exactly. Our sources make a big deal about this technical distinction. You are effectively creating your own little specialized data set. You're defining the memory of this AI model just for your project. And that's the critical thing for ensuring accuracy, especially in an academic or professional setting. It only knows what you tell it. That's how it avoids making things up.
Okay, so it's contained. How much can you actually feed it? Is there a limit?
There is. Currently, the free version lets you upload up to 50 documents, 50 sources per notebook, which is already quite a bit. Though the sources do mention a plus tier that handles significantly more, something like over 300 documents. But even with 50, you can organize them. You can group sources by theme. So maybe you put all your lecture notes on, say, organic chem mechanisms into one dedicated notebook. Keeps things tidy.
Right, organized. And the big promise then, the thing that really makes you lean in, is the speed.
That's the headline grabber for sure. The sources suggest that by creating these custom grounded notebooks, well, you could feasibly summarize up to 50 pretty complex research papers in less than 10 minutes.
50 papers. In under 10 minutes.
That's the claim. And think about what that does for tasks like literature reviews. Those normally take weeks, sometimes months.
Oh, absolutely. They're huge time sinks.
So if this works as described, that magnitude of time saving, it's not just an improvement, it's potentially revolutionary for researchers.
Okay, that definitely justifies a deep dive. Let's get into the foundation then. How do you actually build this custom AI memory, getting the information in? When we talk about sources, I immediately think PDFs. Journal papers, articles, but you mentioned it's broader.
Much broader. And this is where the system's flexibility, according to our sources, really shines. It's not just a PDF reader, far from it.
So what else can it take?
Well, obviously PDFs are a staple, but it handles standard documents, things like Google Docs, Google Slides. You can feed it web URLs directly, just paste in links, or even just raw text you copy and paste.
Okay, standard stuff, but you hinted at more.
Yeah, the multimedia integrations where it gets really interesting. It handles MP3 audio files. Think about meeting recordings, voice notes. We'll definitely talk more about that later. It's huge. And it can analyze the transcripts of YouTube videos. You just give it the link, and it works with the transcript content.
Wow, okay. Audio, video transcripts. That really covers a lot of modern information formats. So it ingests all this varied stuff, lecture notes, a website, a video. But let's circle back to that grounding idea. How does the interface actually show you it's sticking to your material? Accountability is everything in research.
Absolutely critical. And the system is built around this. The main workspace, as described, has sort of three parts. Your sources list, the chat area where you interact, and then a notes or studio panel for outputs. The key mechanism, the accountability piece, is that grounding we talked about. Every single response the AI gives you in the chat, it comes with inline citations. Little numbers, like footnotes.
Oh, okay. Like in a research paper.
Exactly. And you don't have to guess where it got that information. You can click that number, and it jumps you directly to the exact passage or passages in the original document that it used to formulate the answer.
So complete transparency. You can always trace it back.
Total transparency. The guardrails are definitely up. You're guaranteed, essentially, that the AI is being intellectually honest because its knowledge is surgically contained within your uploaded library. Nothing external leaks in.
That assurance is massive, especially if you're dealing with really dense or complex material like a whole textbook.
Precisely. The grounding is absolute, whether it's 2 short papers or, a massive textbook. One source specifically detailed someone uploading the entire Clayton Greaves-Warren organic chemistry textbook. That's what, like 1,500 pages?
Whoa. Can most AIs even handle that? I thought they had limits on how much they can read at once.
That's usually the bottleneck. You've hit on a key point. It often comes down to 2 things. How well they parse complex PDFs, especially formatted ones, and these token window constraints, basically, their short-term memory limit. Most general LLMs, they struggle to ingest a whole 1,500-page, densely formatted PDF into one active context. They might summarize chunks, lose the connection between chapters. But NotebookLM, according to the sources, is designed to handle that complex parsing and use its grounding architecture to keep the entire document effectively accessible for every single query. It doesn't forget Chapter 1 when you ask about Chapter 10. It can handle the whole book and only answer from that book.
Okay, the power of that is immediately obvious for students. That gives us like 2 really clear, super useful applications right away. Let's talk about the AI tutor idea first.
Yeah, this is a great one. Imagine you're a student struggling with, say, organic chemistry. You upload your professor's specific lecture notes, maybe the assigned chapters from that big Clayton textbook, perhaps some old worksheets.
Yeah.
Then you just ask it. Explain the basic types of reaction mechanisms: substitution, addition, elimination. And the AI generates an explanation pulled directly from those specific documents you uploaded.
So the explanation uses the same terminology, the same focus as your actual course materials, not just some generic definition from the web.
Exactly. It's tailored. And the learning doesn't stop there. If you read the explanation and you're still like, I don't quite get SN1 versus SN2, you just ask follow-up questions. The AI stays in character as this patient, always available tutor, always referencing only the material you gave it. It won't get tired or frustrated.
That's incredibly valuable. Okay, and the second use case, study guides.
Study guide creation. This one sounds like an absolute game changer, especially for prepping for big exams, high-stakes stuff.
How does that work?
Well, the core idea is using this system to really rigorously check your understanding, making sure you've mastered the concepts relevant to your specific exam. So you upload your lecture notes, your own summaries maybe, workbooks, and here's a really strategic tip from the sources. Find past exams online if you can. Upload those PDFs too.
Okay. Feed it the actual history of the test.
Precisely. Then you ask the AI to generate a personalized study guide based only on that material. It'll focus on the concepts that pop up most frequently in the notes or, crucially, in those past exams. It can help you confirm, the answers to those old questions. Or even better, have the AI generate new mock questions in the style of those past exams.
Wow. So exam prep becomes way more targeted, less just randomly rereading everything.
Significantly more targeted. You're practicing on what's most likely to matter based on the evidence you provided. It takes a lot of the guesswork out.
Okay, that transitions us perfectly. We've gone from the student's world, the lecture hall, the textbook. Now let's move into the deeper, sometimes messier world of PhD research or advanced analysis. We saw how it handles one massive textbook. But what happens when you throw, say, 50 different research papers at it? Papers that might even disagree with each other. This is where it gets really interesting, I think. Tackling that beast, the literature review, months of reading, highlighting, trying to synthesize it all in your head or in messy notes.
Right. And this is where that multi-document chat capability really comes into its own for the serious researcher. It's designed for this exact scenario. Imagine a materials scientist, maybe working in a really specific niche, let's say integrating perovskite solar cells with quantum dots for better photovoltaics, a hot area, lots of papers coming out.
Okay, yeah. Very specific.
So they gather maybe 10, 20, even up to 50 recent papers, preprints, whatever, all focused on that intersection. They upload them all into a single notebook. Now, instead of reading 50 papers one by one, taking notes, trying to connect the dots manually, which takes forever.
Weeks, yeah, minimum.
They can prompt the AI, summarize the key findings from all these papers regarding perovskite quantum dot integration, or even group the findings by the experimental methods used, or summarize the progress chronologically. The AI reads all 50 and gives you a cohesive overview right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But the focused querying is maybe even more powerful.
What do you mean by focused querying?
Let's say you're reading the summary of one paper, maybe paper #7, and it mentions a specific technique, like quantum dot surface modification. You're curious about that. Instead of manually searching through the other 49 papers for mentions of that technique, you just click on that phrase or ask the AI directly. Tell me more about quantum dot modification techniques mentioned in these sources. The model instantly scanned all 50 documents you uploaded, synthesizes everything they collectively say about that specific topic, and gives you a unified answer.
And crucially,
it provides citations, little numbers pointing back to exactly which passages in which of the 50 papers support each part of its synthesized answer.
Okay, hold on. Let's push back a bit here. The sources claim, quite boldly, that a PhD student could potentially draft an entire Chapter 2 The Lit Review in a single session. That sounds almost too good to be true. Research is messy. Papers have different results, conflicting methods, competing theories. Does the AI just smooth over all that crucial academic disagreement? Or does it get confused?
That's a really vital question. And the sources suggest it doesn't ignore or erase conflict. It actually highlights it, but only if you ask it the right way, or if the conflict is central to answering your query. So if you ask something like, what's the consensus on the optimal surface treatment for these perovskites? And maybe half your papers argue for method A, citing stability, while the other half champion method B for efficiency.
Right, a common scenario.
The AI isn't programmed to pick a winner. It won't say method A is best. Instead, it will likely synthesize something like, sources 1, 5, and 12 argue that method A resulted in the highest stability under these conditions, cite sources, while sources 2, 8, and 15 reported better efficiency using method B, noting different precursor materials, cite sources.
So it presents the disagreement, but attributes it using those inline citations.
Exactly. It surfaces the conflict and tells you precisely where that conflict originates within your chosen literature. The researcher can then immediately click those citations and go read the different arguments in the original context.
So you're not just getting an answer, you're getting a map of the conversation, including the disagreements, all tied directly back to the specific documents you decided were important.
Precisely. You maintain control and context. And that's why the sources are so emphatic about the potential impact.
Yeah, they really state it clearly, that a PhD student, once they've uploaded all irrelevant papers, could genuinely generate the structural backbone, the main points, the key citations for their entire literature review chapter. Maybe not the final polished prose, but the core synthesis.
In a single, focused work session.
Yeah.
It fundamentally changes the speed of academic writing. It shifts the researcher's bottleneck away from just finding and reading everything towards the higher-level tasks of critical analysis, interpretation, and structuring the argument.
That covers the writing part, synthesizing what's known. But what about the core of research, finding the unknown? Identifying what hasn't been done yet? The research gap.
This is potentially one of the most transformative aspects for advanced researchers, according to the sources. The tool can actively help find those gaps.
How? Does it just guess?
No, it's more targeted than that. You can directly query the system to identify potential next steps or limitations mentioned within the papers themselves. You could ask, for instance, based on these 50 papers, give me 10 potential research gaps or unanswered questions regarding perovskite and quantum dot integration.
And what does it do then?
It performs a really focused analysis. It specifically looks for sentences or sections in the uploaded papers that explicitly mention limitations of the current study, suggest future work, pose unanswered questions, or highlight areas needing further investigation. It's scanning for phrases like, further research is needed to. A limitation of this work is why. It remains unclear whether future studies should investigate.
So it's extracting the gaps identified by the researchers themselves.
It's exactly. The generated list of potential gaps isn't the AI's opinion. It's a synthesis derived only from the limitations and future directions explicitly stated within the source material you provided. It turns that often frustrating process of reading dozens of papers, hoping to spot a pattern or an overlooked question yourself, into an active interrogation. You're essentially asking the collective literature, okay, what did you all agree needs to be done next?
That's a completely different way to start a research project. Wow. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked text, PDFs. Let's talk about those unexpected inputs, audio and video. This feels really relevant because so much learning now, whether it's practical skills or academic lectures, happens through video or maybe recorded discussions. How does NotebookLM bring that into the fold?
Right. How do you integrate that rich but non-textual information? The YouTube chatbot feature seems incredibly powerful here, especially for learning practical skills or exploring complex topics explained visually. Think about learning a new software or a DIY technique, or even understanding a complex scientific process. There are often dozens, maybe hundreds, of YouTube videos covering the same ground, but perhaps with slight variations or different tips.
Yeah, trying to find the best one or synthesize across them is hard.
Exactly. So with this tool, you can gather, say, up to 50 YouTube video links, all related to one specific topic. Maybe it's advanced 3D printing techniques, or Persian language lessons for beginners, or even something academic like how to write an exceptional literature review. You upload those links. The tool analyzes the transcripts of all those videos, treating them as one combined body of knowledge.
So it's working with the words spoken in the videos.
Precisely. And then you can query that collective knowledge. You could ask, outline the consensus process for setting up this 3D printer based on these videos, or what's the most common mistake mentioned across all these tutorials? The answer it gives you is synthesized from the shared information or common steps found across all the uploaded video sources. It's like having a panel of YouTube experts in the room and asking them to agree on an answer.
That's fantastic for synthesizing practical knowledge. Okay, so that's learning from external multimedia. What about generating your own content quickly? The sources mentioned something about using just your voice.
Yes, the voice-to-peer review drafting workflow. This one seems designed to overcome a common hurdle, that friction between thinking and typing.
The blank page staring back at you.
Exactly. Sometimes your insights, your observations, your conclusions about your own data just flow more easily when you speak them out loud. So the workflow described is this. A researcher has a specific figure from their work up on screen, maybe a complex graph, a data table. They look at it, think about it, and then record a short voice note, maybe 5 minutes long. It has to be an MP3 file. In that voice note, they just talk through their observations. Okay, what I'm seeing here is X, which suggests Y, and the main conclusion is Z, just a natural spoken summary.
Okay, so they captured their thoughts verbally. Then what?
They upload that MP3 as a source into NotebookLM. Then they give the AI a prompt like, take the main conclusion from this voice note and write a paragraph suitable for the results section of a peer-reviewed journal.
Whoa, seriously?
That's the idea. The AI processes the audio transcript, identifies the core conclusion the researcher stated, and then reformats it into structured, formal, grammatically correct prose appropriate for a scientific paper. The source material had that great quote about it replacing the need to mash the keyboard with your hands like a Neanderthal. It gives you a solid starting point for that first draft paragraph.
That's amazing. It gets you over that initial inertia. Of course, you'd still need to check it, right? Refine the wording.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Critical step. You still need to verify the accuracy, polish the terminology, ensure nuance isn't lost. It's a first draft generator, not a final submission button. But getting that first draft down can be half the battle.
Definitely. It lowers that activation energy. Now, related to audio, one of the most stressful parts of academic life, especially for PhD students, is the supervisor meeting.
Yes. The source of much anxiety.
And often you walk out, the supervisor walks out, and you both have slightly different ideas about what was actually decided or what the key takeaway was. Leads to wasted work.
It's a classic problem. Misaligned expectations, confusion about next steps. And this tool, according to the sources, offers a surprisingly elegant solution for that accountability and clarity gap.
Using audio again.
Yes. First, and this is crucial, you need to get permission from everyone in the meeting to record it. Ethical step number one.
Right, absolutely. Can't just secretly record your supervisor.
Definitely not. But assuming you have permission, you record the meeting, maybe it's 45 minutes, an hour long, save it as an MP3, then you upload that meeting recording as a source into a dedicated notebook, maybe labeled supervisor meetings, and then you prompt the AI. You can ask things like, give me the 3 main outcomes or action items from this meeting, or highlight the specific tasks I need to complete before our next meeting.
And it can pull that out of a potentially rambling conversation.
That's the value proposition. Supervisors, bless them, are often prone to tangents. They might throw out 3 interesting but ultimately tangential ideas, wander off topic, and muddy the waters of the original meeting agenda. The AI, by analyzing the transcript, can filter out the noise and extract the core agreements, the concrete decisions, the actionable next steps.
Wow. The sources had an example of this.
Yeah, one detailed example was the AI confirming that the agreed-upon research focus, despite discussion of other things, was definitively on surface functionalization rather than nanoparticle size. It clarified the primary goal.
That resolves so much potential ambiguity. It ensures everyone is on the same page, working on the agreed plan with a verifiable record. That's huge for project management and research.
Huge. It brings clarity and accountability to what can often be a very fuzzy process.
Okay, so we've covered getting information in text, PDFs, audio, video. We've talked about interacting with it, summarizing, querying, finding gaps, drafting. Now let's dive deeper into strategy. How do the real power users gather and format their sources for maximum effect? It sounds like it's not just about randomly uploading stuff, but being quite deliberate, especially with large amounts of text, like book quotes.
That's exactly right. It's about strategic collection and formatting. Stephen Johnson, who co-founded NotebookLM, actually outlined several really insightful strategies in the materials we looked at. These go way beyond basic summarization.
Okay, like what?
Well, one interesting technique is what you might call direct reference list interrogation. Find a really important foundational paper in your field, get the PDFs for its bibliography, maybe 20, 30, 50 references, upload all those reference papers into a single notebook. Now, instead of just chatting with one paper, you can chat with the entire intellectual ancestry of that key paper simultaneously.
So
You could ask broad questions across that whole cluster of related work. What was the general consensus on organic photovoltaic efficiency in this body of literature? Or what were the common synthesis techniques for graphene discussed across these specific papers? It lets you query a whole subfield represented by that reference list.
That's powerful. Okay, what else did Johnson suggest?
His most ambitious strategy, the one that really points to a different way of working, is the concept of the everything notebook.
The everything notebook sounds comprehensive.
It is. The idea is to create a single, massive, personalized knowledge base. We're talking potentially thousands of carefully curated quotes and notes harvested from hundreds of books, articles, papers you've read over years. You even include excerpts from your own published work, your own notes. The goal, as Johnson put it, is to make this notebook a source for all the important ideas I've encountered, all the ideas I've written, and all the ideas I've published.
So it becomes like an external, searchable version of your own brain's accumulated knowledge on your topics of expertise.
Precisely. An extension of your own memory and expertise, but perfectly organized and instantly queryable.
Okay, I love that concept, but practically, how do you get all those quotes, especially from books? Most important books I read are ebooks, and their rights protected. You can't just upload the file. How do you capture highlights efficiently?
Yeah, that's the hurdle. You need machine-readable text. The sources lay out a few clear, efficient pathways for this. First, if you happen to use the Google Playbook's e-reader, it's pretty straightforward. You use the normal highlight feature as you read. The absolutely critical step, though, is to go into settings and make sure Save Annotations to Google Drive is turned on.
Ah, okay. Hidden setting alert.
Very hidden, very crucial. If that's on, every time you highlight a passage, it automatically gets saved along with the book title and author into a special Google Doc in a folder called Playbooks Notes in your Drive. It just builds up automatically as you read.
Okay, that's slick for Google Books users. What about the rest of us using Kindle, Kobo, other readers?
For those, the recommended tool is an app called Readwise. Many listeners might already use it. Readwise is designed specifically to aggregate highlights and notes from Kindles, Instapaper, Pocket, various places. What makes it great for NotebookLM is its export function. It's optimized for this. You can export all your curated highlights and notes, and you have options. You can export them split up by book if you're working on a smaller project, or, and this is key for that everything notebook idea, you can export them as a single continuous stream file. One massive document containing quotes from potentially hundreds of books.
Why is that single stream better than separate files for each book?
Because the AI then treats that entire stream as one giant, coherent source document representing your synthesized reading. It can find connections between books more easily. If you ask it a question about, say, collective intelligence, it can pull quotes from 5 different authors in that single stream file, rather than having to conceptually link 50 separate small book quote files. It enables that cross-pollination of ideas across your entire reading history much more effectively.
Got it. That makes sense for deep, long-term knowledge building. What about faster-moving stuff? Capturing info from the web news articles, blog posts, market reports.
For web capture, the suggested workflow uses Google Keep, either the browser extension or the app. As you're reading something online, you just select the text you want to save, right-click, or use the app menu and choose Save to Keep. Importantly, this usually captures both the text snippet and the source URL, which is vital for citation later.
Okay, so you build up a collection of Keep notes. Then what?
Once you have a batch of relevant clippings in Keep, you can select them all and bulk export them into a single Google Doc. That Google Doc then becomes a force you can upload into NotebookLM. The key is just making sure that export process keeps the text linked to its original URL so you can always trace it back or verify the context.
Okay, so we have methods for books via Google Play or Readwise and web via Keep. Now, all these methods, gathering quotes from ebooks, Readwise streams, Keep clippings, you had mentioned something critical earlier, metadata. The sources really hammered this point home. Why is that formatting so vital?
It is absolutely the key to unlocking the real power, especially of that everything notebook. Think of the metadata, the author's name, the book or article title, and ideally, the page number or specific URL as a non-negotiable label you must attach to every single quote or paragraph you put into your source file.
Why? What does it enable?
It enables precision querying. Look, if you just dump thousands of quotes into a file and ask a general question like, what are the main arguments about climate policy in here? The AI can probably find relevant passages based on keywords. Fine. But what if you want to ask a much higher value specific question? Something like, what exactly did Robert Wright argue about the role of non-zero sumness in promoting collective intelligence in his book Non-Zero?
Right, a very targeted query.
The AI can only answer that accurately if the label Robert Wright and the label non-zero are physically attached, right there in the text, to the relevant paragraphs within that massive stream file you uploaded. Without those tags, the AI has no way to isolate Wright's specific arguments within the undifferentiated ocean of text from hundreds of other authors. It can't disambiguate.
So the metadata turns a big text blob into structured, queryable knowledge.
Precisely. And if you consistently include that bibliographic info, you can even do things like ask the AI, after it gives you an answer, to generate a bibliography for the sources cited in your previous response. It can pull the author title page info directly from those tags. It's transforming raw text into a structured, addressable knowledge base.
Okay, that's a fundamental shift in how you'd curate your notes. Got it. So we've uploaded strategically, we've chatted, we've built this rich, potentially massive, well-formatted source base. We're past just asking questions now. We need synthesis, organization, outputs. So what does this all mean for the day-to-day workflow? How does it help organize all this?
This is where the system moves beyond just the chat interface and offers more specialized tools, often found in what the sources call the studio panel. These are designed for instant organization and generating specific kinds of synthesized outputs.
Okay, let's start with basic organization. How do you mark important stuff if you can't highlight directly in the PDFs?
Right, that's a key difference from traditional PDF readers. The sources say NotebookLM doesn't allow direct highlighting within the source docs themselves. Probably a choice to maintain the integrity of the original source and focus on interaction. So the primary way you save insights is through note-taking and pinning. As you chat with the AI and get useful responses, or if you find a particularly crucial paragraph in a source, you save it to the dedicated notes section.
So you're building up a collection of key findings in this separate notes area.
Exactly. And then within those notes, you can pin the absolute most critical snippets, maybe key definitions, core arguments, action items to the very top of the notes section. It becomes a dynamic, curated collection of your most important findings and synthesized points, easily accessible instead of being scattered across highlights in 50 different documents.
Okay, that makes sense as an alternative to highlighting. Now, what about those one-click outputs? Turning the research into something usable.
Yeah, these seem really powerful for rapidly structuring information. The sources detail several options. First up is timeline generation.
A timeline? How does that work?
You literally just click a timeline button. The AI then scans through all your uploaded sources, looking specifically for dates, time markers, chronological references, things like publication dates, mentions of before 2010, specific event dates within a case study, etc. It then automatically constructs a chronology of the main events, milestones, or the historical progression of the topic based only on the time references found in your sources.
That's brilliant for getting historical context. Right. You could instantly see how a field developed or map out the sequence of events in a project.
Exactly. It gives you that historical map of your specific topic generated instantly from your chosen literature. Really useful for orienting yourself or for presentations.
Okay, what's next?
Second is the briefing doc generator. This sounds like a quick, structured summary tool, really useful for a couple of high-pressure situations. Scenario 1. You have to give a quick presentation to your research group, maybe summarizing a new paper or your recent findings. You hit Briefing Doc, and it generates a concise, logically structured summary covering the key points, methodology, findings, limitations from the selected sources. Helps you prep fast.
Okay, instant presentation outline. What's Scenario 2?
Scenario 2 is Preparing right before one of those high-stakes supervisor meetings we talked about. Maybe 5 minutes before you walk in, you generate a briefing doc based on the papers you were supposed to read or your recent work. The goal is to walk into that meeting, as one source put it, filled up with the knowledge of recent literature. You quickly refresh the most important synthesis points, the key arguments, the things you need to discuss.
That's a massive time and stress saver. Instead of frantically skimming notes, you get a concise, AI-generated summary tailored to your sources, minutes before the meeting. Walk in prepared, confident.
Exactly. Saves time. Probably saves some embarrassment, too. Builds confidence for both sides.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's the facts document, or FAQ generator.
FAQ, like frequently asked questions.
Sort of, yeah. It takes the core information in your sources and reframes it into a simple question and answer format. This seems great for self-study, like creating a quick factual checklist for yourself, or maybe for preparing content for a blog post, a presentation handout, or any situation where people need to quickly scan for specific bits of information.
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you uploaded a dozen papers on, say, nanomaterial synthesis, it might generate questions like, what is nanoparticle agglomeration? Or how are the size and characteristics of nanoparticles typically controlled? Or what are the common characterization techniques mentioned? With the answers pulled directly and cited from your uploaded papers.
Okay, useful for quick knowledge checks and content creation. Anything else in the studio panel?
There's also quiz generation. The AI can create a quiz based on the material you've saved in your notes section. So after you've curated your key findings, you can test yourself on them. A powerful review tool before an exam or presentation.
Makes sense. Self-testing is key for retention.
Now, we have to talk about the controversial feature, the audio overview.
Ah, yes, the feature that apparently gets a little too enthusiastic about summarizing your research.
Yeah, what's the deal with that? It generates a podcast.
Basically, yes. It's an option where the AI summarizes your sources or maybe your reference list by generating audio of two synthesized voices having a conversation about it, like a mini podcast discussing your work.
Okay. Why is that controversial?
Well, the sources noted that users found the tone of the synthesized voices a bit much, described as a little cheery, aggressively positive, almost like, a 1950s educational film narrator.
Yeah. So imagine you've uploaded serious papers on, climate change policy failures or a complex disease mechanism, and the summary comes back as this upbeat chipper chat. It can be pretty jarring and might even undermine the perceived seriousness of the content. The tone doesn't always match the topic.
I can see how that would be weird. Is there any upside to it?
The serious potential upside, according to the sources, is the interactive mode of this audio overview. You can be listening to this generated summary maybe while you're commuting, washing dishes, whatever, and you can actually interject with your own voice at any point.
Interrupt the AI podcast.
Exactly. You hear something interesting, or you have a clarifying question. Would you speak up? Maybe ask, hold on, can you give me the specific device efficiencies reported in those papers? The AI will pause the generated chat, answer your specific voice query directly from the grounded sources, and then resume the audio overview.
Okay, that sounds genuinely useful, like having a conversation with your research summary.
It does. So the format might be a bit quirky, but that interactive voice querying during playback could be quite powerful for digesting information on the go.
Wow. We have covered so much ground here. I mean, from uploading an entire organic chemistry textbook and having it tutor you, to recording supervisor meetings to ensure clarity, to strategically building this massive everything notebook from book highlights with precise metadata.
Yeah, the range is pretty vast.
The utility for the learner, and by learner I mean anyone engaged in knowledge work, so that's you listening, it seems immense. Speed, definitely. Thoroughness, because it checks everything you gave it, and context-specific answers, which is crucial.
I think the paradigm shift here is really profound, potentially. The sources paint a picture where this kind of tool changes the fundamental nature of research. It shifts from mostly passive reading, where you're just trying to absorb and retain information from disparate sources, to active, almost surgical interrogation of a unified, personalized, and accurate knowledge base that you built.
Right, instead of hunting for a needle in a haystack of PDFs.
You're having a focused conversation with a single, intelligent assistant that represents that entire haystack, perfectly organized.
That makes sense.
And it raises an interesting final point, thinking about that flexibility in source selection. You mentioned earlier how you can save your chat responses and key findings to the notes section. Well, there's a feature where you can then take all those notes you've curated and convert all notes to source. It essentially creates a new source document made up entirely of your own synthesized thoughts and key takeaways.
Okay, so you have a document of your own understanding.
Exactly. Now, imagine you unselect all your original papers and books, and you only select this new all notes source document.
So the AI is now only grounded in your notes, your interpretation.
Precisely. You can now use the AI to analyze and transform your own synthesized thoughts. You're asking the AI to reflect on your understanding, your structure of the research. You could prompt it. Critique the 3 major themes I seem to have pulled out in these notes, or what are the common threads or potential contradictions in my own synthesis here? You're using the AI to analyze your own thinking process based on the trail you left in your notes.
That's meta, using the AI to analyze the memory you built using the AI.
It closes the loop in a fascinating way.
So if this tool, or tools like it, can genuinely capture and synthesize your entire reading history, every important quote, every note, every meeting summary, every key paper you've processed, does the future of knowledge work become less about the frantic search for new information scattered everywhere and maybe more about skillfully leveraging and interrogating the vast, perfectly organized, personalized memory you've deliberately built over time?
That's a provocative thought.
Something to chew on, maybe, as you tackle your next big research project or learning challenge.